helps facilitate international payment. So that is the scene. Huge numbers there on the streets of Berlin in solidarity with the people of Ukraine. There are protests too in Moscow this afternoon. Let's go to Sky's Diana Magne, who's in the Russian capital. What's happening where you are, Diana?
Well, you described Berlin. That's what it is to live in a free city compared to here, where you come out onto the streets. And if police, particularly if you're standing alone, they'll just pick you up and take you off and arrest you. There are meant to be demonstrations in major cities across this country starting about half an hour ago, 4 o'clock our time, 1 o'clock your time. But the location is always given last minute, and we were told that it would be here, and when we arrived there was quite a heavy police presence, people mingling around, just taking people out of the crowds, as we've seen so many times before. At the Navalny rallies at the beginning of last year, 3 or 4 big days where they just ended up being crushed because so many demonstrators were taken away. There were big rallies across the country on the day of the invasion, and thousands, nearly 2,000 arrests on that day. There have been smaller demonstrations since, and the same pattern. So we have to see how long this anti-war movement really has in it, given the fact that the repercussions, the risks in what is essentially a security state waging a war on a brother nation of Ukraine goes on. But this is pretty small where we are at the moment. I think we have pictures from St. Petersburg where you have a slightly larger turnout. I do expect more people to be coming out over the next couple of hours here in Moscow too. But I just spoke to one person who came out today, and he said, you know, most of my friends are sitting at home depressed because there's just nothing that we can do, not even worth coming out because we can't change anything. I spoke to someone who came out the other day, and they said, you know, all I can do in my conscience is to come out onto the street. If my son asks me, what did you do when Russia invaded Ukraine, at least I can say I raised my voice. But people really do feel shame and incredible sadness at what is going on. But that is not the whole country. There are 2 countries in Russia, essentially. There is the internet nation, and there is the TV nation, the older generation who are fed the propaganda that comes on state TV. And bear in mind that on state TV, you're not allowed, or on any Russian news channel, you're not allowed to put on the channel anything other than is the official information. Per the media regulator, you can only
you were talking about St. Petersburg. I'll just come in there. Let's show our viewers some pictures from St. Petersburg. Riot police seem to be moving in there. You said there was a bigger demonstration. It looks like that is the case, but being carefully staged, managed here by the authorities. I just want to have a look at these pictures. There do seem to be quite large numbers in St. Petersburg. Let's just have a listen in to some of the sounds from this protest. Yeah, the police going in again now to quell these crowds. Let's return to Diana. People really, I suppose, very brave going onto the streets of these larger cities across Russia, Diana.
Absolutely, and you hear that chant, "Nie vojna," that means no to war. And I think there will be larger demonstrations here too. But as I was saying, essentially there are 2 nations in this country, the internet nation and the TV nation. Those people who are brave enough to come out onto the streets, normally younger, and their ability to give their children the same opportunities as they'd hoped for from the 90s through the 2000s and 2010s. Better opportunity than it looks now if sanctions are imposed, which to a large extent will freeze Russia economically and will mean that it looks the other way for a lot of people here.
Yeah, and while we're looking at these pictures from St. Petersburg, riot police firmly moving in now. We've seen one demonstrator on the ground. Looks like a woman being apprehended there, things turning quite ugly.
You know, half the country are behind it. They think that this is just a limited operation. They aren't shown the pictures of Kiev being bombed. They aren't shown the pictures of Kharkiv being bombed. They're given a very specific view of this conflict, which is that it's humanitarian and that they needed to do it on behalf of the people of Donbass, who they are told Ukraine has essentially persecuted for a very long time. Then there's a big chunk of society who realise that there's very little they can do to change anything, so they're quite apolitical. And when you talk to them about it, they say, well, I don't really know, I'm not really into politics, because when you can't change anything in politics, why be political? And then there are the smaller proportion of people who are coming out onto the streets of cities like St. Petersburg, who are coming out here in Moscow, who are risking detentions, because it just, I mean, all you have to do is appear and you're detained. And they think it's worth it. They get their news on the internet, they get their news via Instagram, they see what's going on. I think a lot of people aren't sure what sources to trust. A lot of people in the middle who say I'm apolitical will also say to you, I'm told one thing and here it says another and I don't really know what to believe. Well, that is the nature of a state that has fed its people propaganda for so many decades, since Soviet times, that its people don't really know how to investigate or interrogate news sources. So I think that's the picture, it's not clear. And a lot of people, unfortunately, because of the propaganda that they're fed, believe that what Putin is doing is the right thing. And a lot of people think it's unconscionable because they have relatives and friends, and Ukraine is an incredibly close country, and they do see that he is moving in on the whole country rather than just a limited operation as he's pitched it.
Yeah, we sit on these pictures just for a moment, Diana, from St. Petersburg. There's loads of riot police now there. There's some words coming out through Reuters, in fact. Let me just update our viewers to do with President Putin, who, it appears, according to these reports, has ordered the military command to put nuclear deterrence forces on high alert after what he has called aggressive statements by NATO countries. We can see the Russian president there briefing his generals, so that could be a sign of a potentially worrying escalation, these reports coming in. And we're waiting exactly for a translation to hear what he has to say, but it looks like he has ordered his military command, his generals, to put nuclear deterrence forces on high alert after what he calls various statements by NATO countries. So clearly to do with continuing tensions and increasing tensions, and if so, that would signal a dramatic and worrying escalation in the conflict with Ukraine. We'll monitor what the president of Russia is saying and bring you the latest as it develops. But here, 2 church services have been offering prayers for those fighting in Ukraine. Let's go to Sky's Aisha Zahid, who's in central London. Afternoon to you, Aisha. What's happening where you are?
Well, it's been an incredibly emotional mass this morning here. The Holy Family Cathedral is the largest gathering place for the Ukrainian community in the UK. And at the mass service this morning, there was the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK in attendance alongside other dignitaries as well. And in the sermon delivered by the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Southwark, he spoke about how everyone loses in war and the fact that war leads to the face of humanity becoming disfigured. So some powerful words. There was a lot of emotion, some people becoming visibly upset. Now I'm joined by one of the bishops at the church. Thank you very much for joining us today. So could I start by just asking your thoughts and your reflections on the current situation?
Well, of course, on Thursday morning, like everybody else, I woke up and heard the news and my heart broke. And over the last 2 days, it's continued to be devastating, and along with all of our Ukrainian Catholic community or Ukrainian community here in the United Kingdom, we're in constant contact with our family and friends in Ukraine, giving them our support, assuring them of our prayers, and feeling very much for them.
And you've touched on it there. Could you tell us about the impact this is having on the Ukrainian community in the UK?
Well, the Ukrainian community here in the UK has had to deal with a war that's been ongoing for 8 years already. And in some ways, you'd think that we became numb already because of this. But the magnitude of this escalation of this war is just so devastating and so unbelievable. And so the effect that it's having is, of course, is that we're coming together as a community, giving each other support, asking how our families and friends are in Ukraine, coming together to pray, to be able to be in prayer. We heard this morning that our patriarch, Sviatoslav, the head of the Ukrainian Catholic Church, told people that they had to stay home today and not be able to go to church because of martial law that they had to be in because of the bombing and things like that. So it was very important for us here in the United Kingdom to be in church for our brothers and sisters in Ukraine.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So as you heard there, Ukrainian community in the UK banding together. We spoke to a number of people as they left the service this morning, and many shared their heartbreaking stories, shared stories of what their family members are facing. So emotions rife here.
Aisha, many thanks indeed. Aisha Zahid for us there in central London. I want to take you back straight away to St Petersburg and warn you of some distressing images in what you are about to see. Riot police clearly rounding on protesters there. Let's just look at the extent of what's going on there. As Diana Magne was saying, people are taking to the streets of various cities in Russia. She expected more people in Moscow, but these are some dramatic scenes from St Petersburg, where people have braved, taken to the streets in bravery, really, against the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But riot police out in real force there, and you can see protesters on the ground, some being dragged away. Noisy demonstration, it has to be said, but clearly the authorities trying to keep control of the situation there, but people determined to make their voices heard.
не как президент. Я обращаюсь к российским гражданам как гражданин Украины. С вами нас разделяет более 2000 километров общей границы. Вдоль нее сегодня стоят ваши войска, почти 200 тысяч солдат, тысячи боевых машин. Ваше руководство одобрило их шаг вперед на территорию другой страны. И этот шаг может стать началом большой войны на европейском континенте. Мы точно знаем, нам не нужна война, не холодная, не горячая, не гибридная. Но если на нас будут наступать войска, если у нас попытаются отнять нашу страну, нашу свободу, наши жизни, жизни наших детей, мы будем защищаться. Не наступать, защищаться. Наступая, вы будете видеть наши лица. Не наши спины, наши лица. Сегодня я инициировал телефонный разговор с президентом Российской Федерации. Результат – тишина. Хотя тишина должна быть на Донбассе. Поэтому сегодня я хочу обратиться ко всем гражданам России. Не как президент. Я обращаюсь к российским гражданам как гражданин Украины. С вами нас разделяет более 2000 километров общей границы. Вдоль нее сегодня стоят ваши войска, почти 200 тысяч солдат, тысячи боевых машин. Ваше руководство одобрило их шаг вперед на территорию другой страны. И этот шаг может стать началом большой войны на европейском континенте. Мы точно знаем, нам не нужна война, не холодная, не горячая, не гибридная. Но если на нас будут наступать войска, если у нас попытаются отнять нашу страну, нашу свободу, наши жизни, жизни наших детей, мы будем защищаться. Не наступать.
I have moderate to severe ulcerative colitis, so I'm taking
NATO began the transfer of weapons to Ukraine. Tonight it became known that the NATO countries began the transfer of various types of weapons to the territory of Ukraine. At the moment, it is known that a military convoy crossed the border, which brought anti-tank missiles and missile systems, man-portable air defense systems, small arms, ammunition, etc. to Ukraine. According to official data, tonight a group of several trucks crossed the Polish-Ukrainian border and delivered a large amount of weapons and ammunition to the territory of Ukraine. The same information was confirmed in Lithuania, noting that protective equipment, helmets, body armor, and various weapons were delivered to Ukraine. Despite the fact that the Russian side has not made any official statements in this regard, at the moment the actions of the NATO countries should be regarded as an attempt to resist Russia. However, according to analysts, the situation can even be qualified as an attempt at aggression. It should be noted that in the near future, the Netherlands also plan to supply their weapons to Ukraine. French military captured a Russian ship. France has seized a cargo ship in the English Channel that the United States says was linked to the son of a former Russian spy chief, in one of the first visible displays of the West enforcing sanctions on Russia for its Ukraine invasion. The U.S. Department of the Treasury has issued blocking sanctions against the vessel, which it said is owned by a subsidiary of Russian lender Pромsvязьbank, one of the Russian entities hit by Washington's sanctions. The bank's CEO, Pyotr Fradkov, is the son of Mikhail Fradkov, a former head of Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, who also served as prime minister under Russian President Vladimir Putin. Pyotr Fradkov was himself included in the latest round of U.S. sanctions. The Baltic Leader vessel was headed for St. Petersburg, but was diverted to the port of Boulogne-sur-Mer in northern France between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., 2 to 3 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time, Captain Véronique Magnan, of the French Maritime Prefecture, told the Reuters news agency. The vessel was strongly suspected of being linked to Russian interests targeted by the sanctions, she said. Pромsvязьbank told Reuters in a statement that its subsidiary no longer owns the Baltic Leader, which was bought by a different entity before the sanctions were imposed. Magnin, the maritime prefecture spokeswoman, said checks were being carried out by customs officials and the ship's crew was being cooperative. The U.S. Treasury said Pромsvязbank was put under sanctions for operating or having operated in the defense and related material and financial services sectors of the Russian Federation economy. NATO began the transfer of weapons to Ukraine. Tonight it became known that the NATO countries began the transfer of various types of weapons to the territory of Ukraine. At the moment, it is known that a military convoy crossed the border, which brought anti-tank missiles and missile systems, man-portable air defense systems, small arms, ammunition, etc. to Ukraine. According to official data, tonight a group of several trucks crossed the Polish-Ukrainian border and delivered a large amount of weapons and ammunition to the territory of Ukraine. The same information was confirmed in Lithuania, noting that protective equipment, helmets, body armor, and various weapons were delivered to Ukraine. Despite the fact that the Russian side has not made any official statements in this regard, at the moment the actions of the NATO countries should be regarded.
Nur militärische Lager angreifen, während ich Videos von Zivilisten in Orten gesehen habe, von toten Menschen gesehen habe. Das passierte auch, das passiert seit Donnerstag. Die gleichen Lügen wiederholen sich.
Ukraine claims it shot down a Russian Il-76 transport plane. Ukrainian forces claim to have shot down a Russian Il-76 Candid airlifter flying near the country's capital Kiev tonight, although there is no independent confirmation of this so far. Il-76 are generally used for heavy transport and paratrooper operations, though there are derivatives of the design that also serve as aerial refueling tankers and early warning aircraft. This comes as Russia's invasion of Ukraine is now entering its third day. At the same time, while details are still limited, Sergei Nikiforov, the top spokesperson for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, has said that the groundwork is being laid for negotiations to bring an end to Russia's invasion. This follows a number of reports today that suggest, despite advancing deeper into Ukraine, Russian forces have been unable to make the military gains they had hoped to have achieved.
Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said Friday that any attempt by Finland to join NATO would have military and political repercussions. The message was a direct threat to the Nordic country, which has steadfastly remained neutral for more than a century. But Russia's unbridled military assault on Ukraine, a sovereign nation that posed no threat to its borders, has made several countries in Europe rethink their decisions not to join NATO. The invasion was spurred partly by Russian President Vladimir Putin's fear that Ukraine would join NATO and become a fully functioning Western-style democracy. On Thursday, Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin said the Russian invasion would shift the long-running debate in Finland around NATO membership. Finland is not currently facing an immediate military threat, but it is also now clear that the debate on NATO membership in Finland will change, Marin said, according to YLE News. On Friday, Finland and Sweden joined a call of all the NATO members' heads of state. Russian forces are closing in on Kiev as Moscow's invasion of Ukraine continues. Kiev officials warned residents in the capital's northern Obolin district not to go outside on Friday due to the approach of active hostilities. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense urged people in the area to either take shelter or make petrol bombs to neutralize the occupier.
For anyone who's tortured by gum disease or tooth decay. This solution is so simple and so incredibly powerful that it's been clinically proven to.
Day 4. Russia has stepped up its military advance as its troops enter Ukraine's second biggest city. Kharkiv is situated in the northeast, near the separatist-held regions of Luhansk and Donetsk, more than 400 kilometers from the capital, Kiev. Several military vehicles have been seen moving along a street in Kharkiv city center. The regional governor says Ukrainian forces are battling Russian troops and warns civilians not to go outside. Russian forces have attacked oil and gas facilities, sparking huge explosions on the fourth day of its land, air and sea invasion of Ukraine. Troops are trying to take over the Vasilkiv air base. That's 40 kilometers southwest of Kiev. An oil depot there is on fire after being hit by a Russian missile. Air raid sirens have sounded in Kiev minutes before a blast was heard. The city's 3 million residents have been told to take shelter, with fears the battle will get close to the city centre. A curfew has been imposed until Monday morning. Hoda Abdelhamid joins us live now from Dnipro in eastern Ukraine. Hoda, just get us right up to date with all the main developments overnight your time.
Well, in Kharkiv, I think that's where the most significant development happened in this part of the country. The Russians, according to the civil administrator, that some Russians light vehicles have managed to enter the city from the northeast. They also blew a gas pipeline, which would mean that many civilians would not have heating, and it is very cold at this time of the year. It seems that the city, from what we understand, is now surrounded from all sides by the Russians, and it's quite difficult also for civilians to get out of there, those who are trying to escape. Now, these are the early hours of the morning, and certainly we're going to hear a bit more a bit later from the civil administration there, but they were depicting quite a grim picture at this moment. And then if we move towards the capital, Kiev, it's under curfew since last night, Saturday, 8 p.m. until tomorrow, Monday, 8 a.m. According to the government, that's to try to pinpoint what they call the saboteurs.
I don't think this is ever going to end, yo. This war watch.
Civilians trying to
it has to be World War III coming.
Trying to cause chaos there. There was heavy fighting on the streets in many parts of the city. There's also another development in Vasilkiv, which is south of Kiev. The Russians have been trying to get that area. There is an airbase there. According to what we just heard, a gas storage facility, or fuel storage facility rather, has been hit. There's also, we still have unconfirmed report, but it seems that there's some sort of radiation also that's coming out. What we can see from what's going on is that the Russians are trying to hit the infrastructure of the country, trying to make life
well, I guess Putin's preparing his nukes.
Fuel, by hitting gas. And
there was a report on that earlier today.
South of here in Zaporizhia,
I guess he heard NATO's comments about the situation, so
plant there. They haven't been
we'll see, man. It's going to be scary.
According to the military, that's where they are trying to head as we speak.
Is the calculation, do we think, Hoda, for the Russian military that Kharkiv is an easier target to go after because it's almost as far east as you can go before you bump into the Donbass region?
Well, I think the calculation was also that Kharkiv is so close to the Russian border. It's about 40 kilometers from the Russian border. A lot of people who live there are ethnically Russian. It is a country that had shown, a city rather, that had shown support to Russia in the past. There's a lot of commercial links between the two sides. There's even family links between the two sides. And I think the Russians were quite surprised to see that that city, regardless of all these links, has actually put up a fight and is resisting that advance. It's by calculation that really that they started that. They wanted to use Kharkiv as some sort of a rear base, and from there maybe head south towards here, Dnipro, which is a city that the Russians would like to take, because during the past years, during when the separatists had advanced all the way to the Dnipro River, well, this city was sort of the headquarters of the Ukrainian military, and it was from here that they were launching their attack to push back the separatists. The Russians got bogged down in Kharkiv, they got bogged down in Kiev,
If I can go out there, I'll
even
go out
in
there just to
Mariupol.
help.
Yes, they managed
This is sad.
to surround Mariupol. They managed to take Melitopol, but they are not in Mariupol. They do not have that port city under their control. So certainly the advance has been slowed down by all of that, but it was clear that their plan was to try to sort of surround the Donbass and then from there have the separatists push up all the way to the Dnipro River.
Hoda, thank you very much. Hoda Abdelhamid there talking to us live this hour from Dnipro in eastern Ukraine. Well,
Ukraine's second biggest city, now the latest front line in the war with Russia. Street battles are now underway after Russian tanks and
there's
troops
mad
moved
kids
into
around that
Kharkiv
area.
on Sunday. Some of their hardware destroyed in fierce fighting. People have been told not to leave their homes, but not just because of the
much
military
respect to the
advance.
Ukrainians, man. Much love. They holding their thing
Ukraine says
down.
Russian forces blew up this pipeline nearby, and people have been warned to keep inside to protect themselves from the toxic smoke. The blast in the pipeline in Kharkiv happened during a wave of Russian attacks on airfields and oil and gas facilities. Analysts say this is a new phase in the invasion. Russian troops are trying to take over the Vasilkiv airbase, where an oil depot is on fire after being hit by a Russian missile. The site is 40 kilometers from the capital, Kiev.
You have seen that during the whole day there were attacks.
Just imagine us going through that right now in the
including to
United
our
States right
airport,
now.
which we have contained, and now they are continuing.
Crazy.
But all will be good. The night will not be easy, not here, neither in Kiev, but we will withstand.
Air raid sirens have been sounding throughout Kiev, where there have been loud explosions. People are crowding into shelters and metro stations below ground. Fears of an all-out assault on the city haven't yet materialised, and a curfew's in place until Monday morning. But Russia maintains it has made advances into and around several cities in the south. Its defence ministry released these pictures of its forces between Kherson and Berdyansk.
I pay special tribute to those heroically performing their military duty during this special operation to provide assistance to the People's Republic of Donbass these days.
The Kremlin said a Russian delegation had arrived in Belarus for talks with Ukrainian officials, a move rejected by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
If you didn't have these aggressive actions from your territory, we could have talked in Minsk, in your town. This is the truth. That's the situation to talk between neighbors. And now you have made your choice. It depends on you. That's why now we are saying no to Minsk. Other places could be a springboard for talks. We want to talk. We want to meet to end this war.
Zelensky has accused the Russians of deliberately choosing tactics to hurt his people in a conflict that's already displaced 250,000 of them. Alexia O'Brien, Al Jazeera.
Let's take a look at who controls what right now in Ukraine. Russian troops began attacking the country on Friday from Belarus in the north, Russia in the east, and Crimea in the south. Here's the full range of Russia's offensive marked in red. Russian forces also entered from neighboring Belarus through the area around the Chernobyl nuclear plant on the second day of the invasion. It's the site of the world's worst nuclear disaster. Street fighting has broken out in the capital, Kiev, where people have been urged to take shelter. That's despite the fact Ukrainian troops blew up several bridges leading into the city to slow the progress of Russian armored columns. Well, Andrew Simmons is in Lviv in western Ukraine with more on the pipelines that have been targeted.
Well, south of Kiev, there has been an oil facility blown up, the night sky illuminated by that fire, which was, well, as far as I'm hearing now, is still ablaze. Also a pipeline near Kharkiv. Kharkiv, that's the second city in Ukraine, in a terrible state, not helped by this gas pipeline being attacked. The first deputy head of administration in Kiev is saying that there are clashes with saboteurs, as they're called, thought to be undercover Russians who are using sleeper cells or something like that, which is constantly referred to by the information ministry and other officials.
You know them gas prices going to be going up.
So-called saboteurs are set upon by anybody available. That
buy
can
some
be civilians with free handout guns, or it can be other parts of the security forces. That's happening a lot, and we're hearing that some of the explosions, some of the attacks are down to these saboteurs. They could be special forces. We don't have full details on it, but what we do know, as a network, is that it is incredibly dangerous anywhere, particularly in Kiev, obviously, but anywhere in the country.
Welcome to Life Out Here. At Tractor Supply, we have everything you need to make the most of it.
Combat readiness of these troops, and this could be a very risky move, because any kind of a incident or anything like that would really be catastrophical. The Russian president had said that this is in direct response to the NATO countries and their language that they've been using about Russia and Russian troops that are now in Ukraine. This, of course, the two other members of his staff that were present in the room when he had this discussion, he was meeting with his defense minister as well as his chief of staff. Those two men clearly looking very uncomfortable as they received these orders from the country's commander-in-chief. But I think this will be seen as really a very grand move by Vladimir Putin to try and show the international community, not only the Ukrainian officials, that really his position is still one of strength.
And Dorsa, we were just showing pictures of protests that were taking place in St. Petersburg a little bit earlier. Quite large numbers of people there, something that you don't often see in Russia. It's not just protests around the world, it's inside Russia. Is that a reflection of a sentiment felt by a lot of Russians there?
Well, these protests actually started from the first day that Russian troops went into Ukraine on Thursday, February 24th. There was a lot of shock about the decision by Vladimir Putin to send the Russian troops in there. And the protests have been ongoing since. Of course, St. Petersburg is one of the few cities that they've been managing to continue holding these demonstrations. And of course, any form of gathering or demonstrations in public are illegal in Russia. So it is very much
Oh, everything's still quiet. I see in these cameras in Kiev. You still got little civilians running around doing their daily routine, like nothing going on. Hundreds of thousands of refugees already crossing into Poland and Romania. Thank God those countries, you know, they allowed them in.
is the names of oligarchs, Russian billionaires, who are closely aligned with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. We have heard from the British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss,
Okay, I'm giving dabs and
where she
shit.
says
Okay.
these people will have
Okay, giving
nowhere to
dabs.
hide. We are also being told that this list will be continuously updated, particularly in the coming weeks, with new names being added.
This long-running
Places
conflict
Tyrian's
is about
forces,
freedom and democracy in
including
Europe, because if we do not stop Putin in Ukraine, we are going to see others under threat. The Baltics, Poland, Moldova. It could end up in a conflict with NATO.
Now, at the same time, more and more countries are coming forward and announcing assistance to Ukraine. Of course, Ukraine is not a member of NATO, and in the past you've had countries like Germany saying that they will not provide weaponry to Kiev. Germany has now done a U-turn and has reversed its policy, with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz justifying this reverse in policy, saying that it's our duty to, quote, support Ukraine to the best of our ability in defending against Putin's invading army. Berlin has also agreed to allow the Netherlands to deliver German-made weapons to Ukraine. The Netherlands has said that it plans to do this as soon as possible and has confirmed that, in fact, it will be going ahead with this move.
Let's not kid ourselves. Putin will not change his course overnight. But very soon the Russian leadership will feel the high price it is paying. Already in the last week, the Russian stock market sank by more than 30%. That shows our sanctions are working, and we reserve the right to impose further sanctions.
Now, Germany has also said that amongst the weapons it will be sending are anti-aircraft missiles and tank-busting rockets. We've also heard now from Greece and Romania that they'll be sending defense equipment and humanitarian aid. Romania, like other countries, offering to help bring the wounded to their civilian and military hospitals. Now, all of this is coming against the backdrop of more and more European countries closing their airspace to Russian aircraft. The latest country to announce this in the last hour or so was France. Earlier, we heard from Finland, and then we've also heard from other countries who say that Russian aircraft will no longer be allowed to fly overhead, and these include Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Germany and Poland. Later today, EU foreign ministers will be meeting to discuss this, and should they go ahead with a blanket agreement to close Europe to Russian aircraft, then this will be part and parcel of a new package of sanctions being imposed from Europe on Russia.
OK, thanks for that, Paula. That was Paula Sleer there reporting from London. Now, let's run through what's been happening on the ground in Ukraine. It is the fourth day of this latest conflict, with reports of advances by Russian troops and Donbass forces too against the Ukrainian army in various parts of the country. Eyewitnesses have filmed this footage, which they say show Russian forces entering Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv, something also claimed by its mayor. He added that Russian troops are already in the city centre. Russia's defence ministry says a Ukrainian nationalist battalion, meanwhile, used heavy artillery to attack residential areas in the suburbs of the city of Mariupol in southeastern Ukraine, and Ukrainian forces, it's claimed, also targeted a school in the city itself.
Руководство одобрило их шаг вперед на территорию другой страны. И этот шаг может стать началом большой войны на европейском континенте. Мы точно знаем, Нам не нужна война, не холодная, не горячая, не гибридная. Но если на нас будут наступать войска, если у нас попытаются отнять нашу страну, нашу свободу, наши жизни, жизни наших детей, мы будем защищаться. Не наступать, защищаться. Наступая, вы будете видеть наши лица. Не наши спины, наши лица. Сегодня я инициировал телефонный разговор с президентом Российской Федерации.
2 hours ago, let's see what happened. Damn, look at that. That shit look destroyed.
Еще раз, блядь. Еще раз, генерал, блядь. Это генерал, блядь. Знакомьтесь, блядь.
Man laughing, yo. To him, he's having fun, I guess. He's laughing. They walking in the open like nothing.
Все, он отходит.
They got balls, man. I respect that. Oh, High Eagles, my pleasure, man. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you.
Русские пидорасы, сдохните, блядь. Твари, блядь, сдохните. За каждую слезинку, блядь. Твари, блядь. Обещаю, блядь, после этой ебаной войны, блядь, заткнуться на русском языке, блядь, твари нахуй. What the hell is that? Link, back in the vehicle!
Ukraine
Man,
is
she's
not dead yet.
singing. Her hopes are high still. Sad,
The
man.
words to the country's national anthem ring true for Kiev resident Katya.
Long live Ukraine.
The patisserie owner is supposed to be hosting a big birthday party. But instead, she is helping her mother, Oksana Gulyanka, clean up her apartment after it was damaged in an overnight assault by Russian forces. The windows have been completely blown out. Shards of glass cover the cake decorating supplies.
I was sleeping. There was a sharp explosion and I was thrown 3 meters from the room I was in into the corridor. That was it. The glass shattered. There were sounds coming from the street. I got scared, started crawling on the floor.
Most of the residents of the apartment block she lives in are former Soviet army servicemen and border guards. The explosion left Oksana disorientated in a home that has been in her family since the 1980s.
I was completely confused. I did not understand what was going on with me. It was as if I were lifted and dropped. Then I heard screams, sounds. I got up and saw all windows smashed, broken glass. I walked around the flat, quickly gathered a few things, documents that I had prepared in the evening, and I ran out into the street. During the time I was out, 2-3 hours, the main door was forced open. Clearly, the firemen or police were opening the apartment doors, searching for victims. I was alone in the flat when it happened.
Yo, they're attacking civilians, bro. That's not even
by land,
good.
air and sea on Thursday, following a
That's a
declaration
no-no.
of war by Russian President Vladimir Putin.
NATO need to hurry up.
It is the biggest attack on a European state since World War II. In the eastern town of Horlivka in Donetsk, the following graphic images highlight the extent of the destruction. Bodies were carried out of destroyed buildings in the rebel-controlled town, where a school has been shelled and apartment buildings left in ruin.
fuel.
Hold up.
Buildings left.
This person has a picture of Putin on the wall. Is that Putin there? What the hell? And that dude just bombing y'all.
Buildings left in ruin. Fuel, cash and medical supplies are running low in parts of Ukraine after Russia's invasion. Something that, according to UN aid agencies, could drive up to 5 million people to flee abroad. At least 100,000 people are uprooted in Ukraine after fleeing their homes since the assault began. Tens of thousands have already crossed into neighbouring countries, including Poland, Romania, Hungary and Slovakia. Most of the people who have crossed borders are women and children, after Kiev restricted passage for men of conscription age. They have been told to stay and fight.
Car shopping and a meeting.
Hey, how do I know this car is a great deal?
May I? The car gurus takes the...
Только что все спокойно. И что-то бабахнуло в районе Кутузовки.
Oh, he recording live in Kharkiv, whatever, Kiev.
Люди потихоньку выходят на улицу. Магазины не работают, эти круглосуточные. Я думаю, люди начинают...
Sounds peaceful so far. No noise there.
Каждый кулик свое болото хвалит. Школы, лицей, гимназия, все рядом. Садики, магазины. Не дай бог. Да. Их 3 больших микрорайона. В нашем доме что около 18 подъездов. 9-этажка. Вот он тянется вот так. Да. Караул. Не дай бог. Ладно, будем надеяться, что все будет хорошо. Вот недостроенная церковь, это не разрушена. Вот Широнинцев, вид из парка. Ну, машины начинают появляться. Я скажу, что обычно больше движения, сейчас меньше, но есть машины.
No captions and no subtitles.
Снежок.
Draws its forces from Ukraine and deoccupies our territories. This is the end goal of the anti-Putin coalition in the world. Unfortunately, and to stop the war, Russia more, hit Russia harder, hit Russia now. It's a matter of hours and not days to do this important, to make these important decisions and to make these steps. We, Ukrainians, do it on the front line, sacrificing
Ukraine
our
presidency
lives.
agrees to have
And
talks
we have
with
only
Russia.
one request to you: back us up. I want also to say a few separate words to those few European governments which are now trying to water down the sanctions packages, including the banning of Russia from SWIFT. And I will trying to leave by some measures with their left hands and continue to trade with Russia with their right hands. Stop doing this now. Stop trading with the blood of Ukrainian men, women and children. This is not a metaphor.
A genocide.
For the reality of what you're doing. History will judge you, and your names will forever remain in history books as names of traitors of humanity who failed to oppose the aggressor in Europe at a crucial time. I'm confident you do not want to add your names after a comma. It is critically important that Russia is disconnected from SWIFT on the fullest possible extent. All possible.
That's what you gotta
banks.
hurt him at the banks. That's what you gotta
Don't
hurt him.
play political games.
He can't
and
use his
stop
money
earning money
to buy anything.
soaked in our blood.
In the meantime, NATO
Let's
sends,
stop
U.S. sends all the
Putin.
stuff they need.
Let's
$330 million
stop the war.
worth of weapon.
Let's restore
It gets time to get
the
there.
world order and the European order. And only then will you be able to restore at least some. The second most fundamental issue right now is global and severe sanctioning of the Central Bank of Russia. Once again, we demand and we need immediate steps to impose a full financial isolation of Russia from all civilized systems, applying to all Russian banks, including its central bank.
What was that noise? Like a boom. Wow, I'm sad. I'm done for the day. I'll check y'all next time. Tomorrow, day 5.